There are a lot of people asking questions about the famous tunnels in Prescott. Would one of you like to address the tunnels? Walter?
I would be delighted to address the tunnels. It's very easy. There never were any.
You know, Elizabeth, that's what I have always been told.
The fire of 1900 burned primarily the construction of the time, which was wood. The basements of buildings built afterwards are supported by arches before rebar to hold up masonry buildings. So if you see a series of arches underneath all these buildings which were built after the fire of 1900, you think you're looking at a tunnel. You said some of the wildest stories, some of them even said that P.G. Rosenblatt had one built so he could get to the bar from the courthouse without being noticed. Never were tunnels. The excavation on Granite Street of that block, which was occupied by the Chinese families, proved that there were never tunnels anywhere. You can see that exhibit at Charlotte Hall Museum periodically. I'm not sure if it's up now, but those relics are all there. And the archaeologists proved that there were never tunnels from another fable, Chinatown, and so on. If you look at the speakeasy, which was drilled out of the side of the creek, which is now below Moore's Laundry, you go back 40-some feet. People said, well, I've been in them. I had a 40-foot cord, and I went clear to the end. Well, it was dug out of the side of the creek bed of solid rock for a speakeasy and during Prohibition. And you could still go down there if Moore's will let you. But there never actually was something which was built for the purpose of taking anyone or anything from one place to another below ground.
Oh, that's interesting because I have been told that, and at one point in our history, we owned the Moore's Laundry building. You all remember where Radio Shack was? No, Radio Shack before that, it was Sight and Sound. And I knew there was a basement there. I've been in the basement at the Palace. I've been in several of the basements, but never anything about tunnels.
You can see the successive arches if you stand in the right places. The other part of that appearance of those buildings is that when the Prescott Mount Union railway line was built from Grove and Gurley, no, actually from Park Avenue and Gurley to Fort Whipple, hundreds of tons of dirt was moved off Elks Hill to make it less steep so that they could build that track up the hill. Though that dirt was filled, that fill was taken downtown and put all around the plaza, north on Montezuma, south on Montezuma, west on Gurley, particularly at the St. Michael. You can see the building's street level was raised a whole story.
Right.
When that fill dirt was put on those corners.
Awesome.
Johnny Markham has written the most definitive story about tunnels for a newspaper when we were running the paper. And she says, I went to the expert, Gail Gardner. And Gail Gardner said there never were any tunnels. And then we all have done a good deal of research since then. And my knowledge and information really has come from architects who can take you and show you tell you what you're looking at.
Wonderful. Thank you, Betty. Walt Minucci, do you have a story about tunnels?
No, I never could find one there. I always looked. They tell me I had a store there in the head hotel building, and they always told me they had a tunnel that was run underneath and I never could find any place underneath there.
Oh, that's just wonderful. PG, did you have something to add?
So I never did find one. I grew up here and we was into everything, but I never could find a tunnel.
That's wonderful. Thank you both. One sec, Bruce. Go ahead.
Elizabeth is absolutely right. There were no tunnels. There were lots of basements. There were lots of stills. There were lots of bootleggers. And there were opium dens. And I'm sure
Yeah.
remember the opium dens
Right behind
on
Whiskey
Grand
Row.
Street,
Yes.
before
Behind Whiskey Row.
it was turned into a high school football
Yes.
field.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep, I remember that.
Okay, just a minute, Jane. Hang on for Bruce. Go ahead.
Where because it was.
Well, George Allen, you remember George Allen?
Built
Architect
this
Allen?
building, designed
He,
this building, Bruce.
He said that when his father was fire chief, that he went with him to inspect the tunnels. Now, that's all I can say is that George said he's been in them. So somebody is not telling the truth.
There was an underground,
That's an interesting little,
it was dug, but it wasn't what you'd call a real tunnel.
Tunnel.
It was longer than a normal basement, but it was not a tunnel. There was no end.
Yeah.
You couldn't go in one end and come out the other. You just had to come back out and come same way you went in. There was no tunnel.
That was where Moore's Laundry
Right,
was.
Moore's Laundry.
Yeah.
right.
Later,
Was there,
it turned
yeah.
in, like you said, to a speakeasy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay,
Have
Jane.
a
Well,
story about that.
When PG mentioned the opium dens, my father-in-law used to tell us the story of when he when he was sheriff, he had to go down into the opium dens to, one time there was, somebody had an overdose and he died. And so they had to call the sheriff and have him come in and investigate it. So he got to see all the opium dens and the people sitting around there. But I don't know if it was a tunnel or not, but it was a den. They called it an opium den.
It was in that 100 block of South Granite, and those basements have been excavated by archaeologists, and all those relics are in Charlotte Home Museum.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where this man died,
My
in
grandson.
the basement of one of those buildings.
Yeah. Well,
Now, Elizabeth, is that where the parking garage is now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we're just trying to relate it to what's there now. Thank you so much. Okay, can we move on to some other stories? We've talked about World War II. My father would have graduated in 43, and his birthday was in February, so he went straight to the war. And it's my understanding that their mothers came to the courthouse square and got their diplomas for graduation that year. Does anyone know if that's true or false? Their parents came in 43 and picked up their diplomas that graduation was on the courthouse square that year.
Well, Charlie should know.
Charlie, are you the
Graduated
class?
43, Charlie?
Yeah.
He should know.
Charlie, were you there? Charlie, were you there at graduation? Was it
92 graduated.
Was it downtown on the Plaza Courthouse Square
No, it was in the auditorium.
at what's that called? Hendricks Auditorium. Okay, I have.
There in 43, or was it the old junior high?
No, they were in high school at 40.
42.
40, they were down on Granite Street.
Tommy graduated in 42.
Okay, that solves that. I've been told the wrong story all these years. But his mother did come get his diploma. That's how young these babies were. Okay, Jane?
Well, my pet peeve with the newspaper, with Prescott, with some of the Prescott people, is that they're calling it the square instead of the plaza. It was always called the plaza. It was put in there, and in all the history books are the plaza. And I wish they would go back to that, because not every town in the United States has a plaza.
Judy, there's a display at the Prescott Public Library of the sesquicentennial and centennial of Prescott objects. And on display is a copy of the original Groom map, which shows the way the town was laid out on a grid pattern, if you can imagine it, on this basin surrounded by mountains with creeks running through it. And the courthouse plaza was named that by the Groom map maker, because everybody who had read Prescott's book thought we were in Mexico, and we really were when we came here.
Oh, that's
In
wonderful.
1848, we acquired this land, but before that, it was Mexico. And those people who read Prescott called himself Prescott. We call it Prescott. Before 1948, it was Mexico, and the people who came here had read the book, The History of the Conquest of Mexico. And they believed, in fact, they nearly named the town Aztlan,
Oh, for heaven's
one
sake.
of those names from prehistory to the south.
Oh, that's just awesome. I did call it the square. I'm guilty.
Yeah,
I
well,
never will again, ever.
well,
You know,
every-
one of the shows that happens down there is called Antiques on the Square.
Oh,
or
but those newcomers don't know any
Yes.
better.
Well,
Judy, that display comes down on Monday, so you all better get there. Is it right? Comes down on Monday? Get to the library and see that sesquicentennial exhibit which Melissa put up.
Wonderful.
library.
My Girl Scout leader when I was growing up in the 60s was Mary Frances Ogg. And she and Jane Robbins kind of single-handedly, the two of them ran Girl Scouts in my whole life. And Mary Fran had us put something in the box, the cornerstone to this very building of City Hall. And when they opened it the other day, and it was 50 years later, I felt very old all of a sudden. So we had Girl Scout things that was a beautiful display they did there. So I'm glad to know that's at the library. Sounds wonderful. Hang on one sec. Go ahead.
Oh, in those years, remember when we had the celebration for the centennial, and Barry Goldwater announced he was going to run for president and all, and this building was dedicated. It all happened right at the same time. But we had over 100 girls that were Girl Scouts in costume. They all had long skirts, different colored check skirts. Some were yellow, some were blue, some were pink, and white blouses. And Mary Fran taught all the girls folk dances. I mean, we helped, but she was the instigator. She played all the music, and we were one of the main features of the Centennial Weekend.
I
And-
remember that. That was really a big
It was
deal.
a big deal at the time, and my son, Tim Robbins, he was on a Centurion, and he was in second grade at that time.
Yeah.
And they
That's not
told
the
him,
word.
they picked two kids from that were supposed to be fourth generation or third generation or something, but they picked them from kindergarten, and two from first, two from second, two from third, and Tim was the vice chairman, and Rothfuss, Julianne
Yes.
was the president. So I said to Tim one day, they went to a meeting, and Barry Ruffner talked to him, and they had some pictures taken, and we have them. And I said, well, what happened when he came home? I said, well, what happened at the meeting? What was going on? He said, they just told me I couldn't leave town for 50 years because they had a key to open the vault that you mentioned.
That's
And
wonderful.
it was really a nice vault. It's all copper, and it's very nice if you haven't seen it.
Oh, that's
So-
wonderful. Now they've buried another one. Is that correct? To go for another 50 years, Elizabeth?
Say again?
There's another box now. Isn't that
That
correct?
box was returned to the Cornerstone, and it's to be opened on the state sesquicentennial, I believe, which will be
Same box.
2062.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah, that will be the state sesquicentennial, and that box is to be opened then.
Now, what did they call those kids that were
Centenarians.
centenarians? Yeah, I didn't even know that existed because I was older than they were. So that's awesome.
That was Mayor Frank Todd who did all that work during the Prescott Centennial. And the book I brought has a story in which includes Tut to a certain degree called Closed for Repairs.
Oh, wow.
So if you want to give this book as a prize, I've just left one right here for my lovely Henson friend, but if you want to give that as a prize, the story is called Closed for Repairs. It actually is my story, but my husband wrote it, and it's in this book.
Wonderful. We would love to. I don't know how I'm going to pick a prize winner, but we can have a drawing, certainly. Yeah. Okay, next story. Who brought another story with them to tell us about? Okay, my friend Bill Travis tells me about the, let's see, what's a good word for it? Houses of ill repute.
And that's what Close for Repairs is about.
Oh, it is.
Want me to tell it?
They were down on.
Paul wants to tell it.
What was the question?
House of Ill Repute.
Johnny, my oldest corner.
Did you visit them? I mean, not,
I delivered
which
close
one?
to 'em.
Bill Travis tells me his father sent him in to deliver, I don't know, milk, water, ice.
Remember the Studio Theater?
Of course, corner of Union and Cortez.
The guy that was running the Studio Theater bought a cleaners, and he hired me to cleaners, and one of my jobs was to take clothes up there to the cleaners.
Which one?
So I took clothes up there, and I got to know them all pretty well. And quit, went to school, went to service, come back home, went to school. Finally ended up in the bank, and Mayor Tutt, Frank Tutt, and these two people that used to run the Hazel rooms came into the bank to borrow money to buy lumber company in Williams.
Oh, that's so good.
That's part of my story. Frank Tutt and Harold Crane made a fortune in black market lumber in World War II. And Harold Crane's wife was the local madam while I was working for Dr. Young.
Oh, my heavenly days.
Charlie Hoffman used to deliver groceries down there, and he'd leave his car running so nobody would think he was inside for any other purpose than delivering groceries.
I want to tell you a good story about Frank Tutt. I went up to Laughlin to gamble, and anyway, on the way back, before I got to Kingman, my car stopped. And the black box. Anyway, I had to go get the bus, and I took the bus. The bus didn't come to Prescott. I went to Ash Fork, and then I had to catch another bus in Ash Fork to get to Prescott. And anyway, my car was finished, and Frank Tutt heard about it. And anyway, he come up to me and he said, "I'll take you to Kingman to pick up your car." So he took me to Kingman, and he said, "Well, here, we might as well go down and gamble." Well, he went down and he lost $500 real quick. And I thought, well, if I had $500, I'd give it to him. But he just laughed about it.
Wow. That is amazing. I love that story. Okay, Allison, Bruce. Thank you, Walt. That's so funny. I knew this would be a good subject.
Well, we all grew up in Prescott, and the Rex Arms and Hazel's Rooms and some of those places we all knew about. We were too young to, even go near them. But Jim Hendricks and I were home on leave from the Navy, and we figured we were men now. So he and I we did end up in Rex Arms, and we participated, and it was wonderful.
Oh, that's the best. You know, when you've been to war, all the rules are off, aren't they? Oh, that's so good. Is the Rex Arms, Bruce, at the end of where is that street? Marina Street.
Where Chase Bank.
Oh, okay.
This bank is today.
Downtown. Okay, excuse me. Go ahead, PG.
Yes, the Hazel Arms and Chase Bank. As Bruce says, we knew what they were, but we were just little kids. But
Oh, I thought we were going to have another confession.
well, this is a confession because actually we committed a little bit of a crime. One time, I guess we were maybe sophomores in high school or something like that, and it was around the 4th of July, and people had firecrackers and things like that, and so Chuck Kennedy, who was our ringleader, took apart all of these firecrackers and put together all of the powder and made a giant firecracker out of it and wrapped it all up with tape and put a fuse in it. And one night we drove down the alley there behind the Hazel Arms, and there was a back door for obvious reasons, and opened that back door and lit this firecracker and threw it up the stairs and then ran like crazy, and all of a sudden there was this big pow, big explosion when that big firecracker went off. Well, it was only a matter of minutes until the police showed up and the lights were flashing, and we ran around, and there was a lumberyard on Granite Street at that point, and we hid back in that lumberyard and had to stay there until the police finally left. Didn't do any serious damage, but caused a little uproar upstairs.
And they still let you be a judge after that criminal record?
Well, I didn't tell them about it.
You never got caught. Whatever.
Well, that's why he made a good judge, because he knew all the rules. He knew all the bad stuff.
There's some truth to that.
You know what was, no, are you through? I think it was graduation night in '37. A bunch of us boys, we went down to the Hazel's room. Which one was on Granite Street where the ballpark is?
That was
Rex Arms.
Rex Arms.
Well,
the
anyway,
football field.
we went down there, and we had these firecrackers, so we lit them and threw them up in the stairs, and there was about 15 men come running out of there carrying their pants, and they were taking their shoes off and pulling their pants up. But we run them all out of there.
Too bad there wasn't YouTube in those days. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, Bruce. Hang on one sec, Bruce.
Well, when we were in high school,
Thank you.
the big thing was to be able to get some beer. And we figured it out. We could go to the Santa Fe bar down by the depot. And all you had to do, when the bartender said, "How old are you?" just say 21, even though we were 16, you know. Well, anyway, it was PG's turn to buy. And he marched in there. The bartender said, "How old are you, kid?" 16. Well, that blew the whole deal. We didn't ever send PG in anymore.
I got to follow up on that.
Oh, that's good. This is the retort.
The problem was is that all three of us walked in together. Now, why we did that, I have no idea. It didn't make any sense. But they looked at us, and the bartender said, "How old are you?" And Pat Rowe was one of them. He says, 21. And then he looked at next guy, Buddy Herring, is, "How old are you?" And he says, 21. He looked at me and he says, "How old are you?" And I looked like I was about 12, and certainly not 21. I couldn't even pass for 18. And I said, 18?
I love
He says,
it.
"You're too young. Get out of here."
That's great. Johnny?
My dad had the bar on up the street, and I knew all these guys, so I tell him before, "Hey, watch for these clowns, they're coming."
That was the Tivoli, right?
Right.
Right. Oh, that's awesome.
I remember that copper penny bar that was in there. Was that in your dad's?
Yeah, the copper penny came after
The bar
Tivoli.
was made of copper pennies on this.
That was later, though, that was done after.
Oh,
That bar originally came out of Jerome.
oh, really? Yeah, well, that was quite a
Back
bar.
The front bar came out.
Well, that, didn't Dayton have that one?
Yes, he had the copper penny.
That's when I saw the
Yeah.
copper pennies, when he was in
Yes.
there.
Well, yeah.
Okay,
because
Allison?
He was renting the building from me.
No. That's great. Okay, I want to come around here to Charlie Fanara.
Tell about the dairy.
I thought I remembered, getting Hacienda Dairy milk delivered to our home, am I right?
You bet they did.
You remember getting Hacienda Dairy milk and a ride home?
No, delivered to our home.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Delivered, well, yeah,
Delivered.
I did,
I thought you did.
yeah. Well, I will say this about dairies in those days. I was telling Paul here. There was 7 dairies in Prescott.
Yeah.
Haymore Dairy, Prescott Dairy, Hacienda Dairy, Owens Dairy. I mean, I could
Butte
go on
Dairy.
and on. And now there's none.
Now there are none.
But I do remember delivering milk to you. I had a lot of girlfriends that helped deliver milk too.
That's awesome. The Hacienda Market was such an icon in our day, wasn't it? Loved going in there. Loved going in there. It was wonderful. It's kind of like what were we talking about earlier?
Let me see.
The windmill. Oh, you guys, my brain is gone. Thank you. It's like the old mill. It was such an icon in our days.
Talking about a small town, I would deal at the Hacienda Dairy and use the market. And when I started working, selling real estate, why, Charlie's dad, I would order the butter and the milk and the cream and everything, and he would drive up to my house, put it in the refrigerator, anything that needed refrigerating, and leave. And he delivered all my groceries for me all the time.
That is
And
awesome.
ran a tab. And ran a tab.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Everybody had to run a tab, and they were one company that would honor your tab.
That is so wonderful.
Well, that was like the ice company. All of us that had ice boxes, ice company, we knew the guy. He'd just come in and leave 25 pounds. We always left a quarter, 15 cents, whatever it was, on top of the ice box, and they never did. But they always delivered and put it right in the refrigerator or ice box.
Yep.
That's wonderful.
There used to be, the coal plant was down across the tracks, and you come up to Larkin Street, the street got real narrow, only one car could go at a time. But that was before they had those fancy coke trucks they just loaded on the back of the flatbed. So when one of the kids would just lay in the street. The guy, he wasn't going to run over him, he had to stop. The other kids come up the alley and get all our coke out of the back. And we never bought coke in our life.
Okay, so I think I'm glad that Raymond Trengove is fishing this weekend and not here to hear you stole his coke off his truck. His dad. Is that what Kenyon Trengove did? He had the coke plant first?
Yeah.
Nice.
And the ice plant.
Nice. Okay, so let's see. Let's field some questions. Are there any subjects we've not hit yet that y'all would like to hear about? Oh, wait a minute. Terry had a good Walt Minucci story.
Tell them about the Eagle Club. The Eagle Club.
I can't hear
Brenley, tell
Talking
him
about
Eagle.
Eagle.
Brenley, Eagle Club.
The
Tell
Eagles
him.
Club.
Tell them about the Eagle Club.
you. Oh, well, there's too many stories about that. I don't know which one you want me to tell.
The clean one.
Was there an initiation?
Oh, well, I think I told about it. We was during when we graduated, where we would all celebrate, and we had these firecrackers, and we went down there and we lit these firecrackers and threw them in the hall. All these men come running out of there carrying their pants and their shoes. And they got out there in the alley and they were dressing out there.
That's so funny.
That was initiation into the Eagle Club? No.
No, I don't know if he's got it right.
Joanne, have you got a story for us? We haven't heard from you, the little quiet girl over here in the corner.
What was that?
Have you got a story for us? Tell us about your family,
Specific.
or growing up.
I just remember the simple pleasures that we all enjoyed in Prescott. We did a lot of hiking, climbed that butte regularly, hiked all the rocks and the dales, for which you couldn't get near now.
Yeah.
Our neighborhood was a quiet one, but we had nightly games. The parents weren't afraid to let their kids out at night.
Right.
We would play kick the can and run, shoot, run until dark, night after night and through the summer. Our neighbor was Winnie Farrell, Cat Gann, Arlie, your nephew or your relative,
Yeah.
Arlie Husk, and just a lot of good times. Simple, but a lot of fun.
Where did you grow up, Joanne? Where in Prescott?
30s and 40s.
No, where?
We're on Summit Street.
Oh, okay.
Across from St.
Across from the school.
Until I was till through high school anyway.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, how many of you went to grade school in Prescott? Well, that's a bunch of you. Okay, and so there was Lincoln and Washington. Was that it?
Jefferson.
Miller Valley.
Miller Valley.
Jefferson. And Jefferson. Who went to Miller Valley? Jefferson? Lincoln. Stinking Lincoln. Who went to Lincoln? And Washington. All right. My mother went to Washington school with you bad boys. I knew that. Yeah, right. She never did a thing wrong. Well, when about, let's see, it was, I think in 09 that Lincoln was built. Am I right? It was about 5 years ago, or was it, anyway. We were at the 100th centennial of Lincoln School.
Oh, no, that was 7 or 8 years ago.
Yes, I would have said 7. Yeah, I think that's right.
Washington.
07.
Quite a few years.
Right. Washington was first, and then Lincoln, and it was so fun to hear the stories. I was raised at Lincoln School, my sisters and I. Our father went to Lincoln, and our grandmother taught at Lincoln. So now my grandchildren are there at Lincoln School. I'm thrilled to death about it. There's a great, history from Lincoln School. So my mom went to Washington, though, with these bad boys. So Charlie.
That's where all the good kids went.
Yeah.
I used to tell my mom that's where all the dumb kids went. That wasn't true. Charlie Phillips. Oh, go ahead, PG.
I have a story that applies mostly to the Crawford girls.
Oh, no.
And it goes back to Lincoln School, which reminded me of it.
Hey, Paul, get a little closer to the microphone here, would you?
Again, goes back to probably 1936 or so. I think I was in the 3rd grade. And one day after school, John Hazeltine and I were playing in the woods behind the houses on Park, because there weren't any other houses other than right on the main drag there. And all of a sudden, Al Crawford, who was 3 years older, came around the corner, and he started chasing me. He said, "I'm going to get you little guys." He said, "I'm going to beat that blank out of you." And he chased us up into the hills, and he never caught us. But I said to myself, well, I'm going to get that guy someday when I get big like he is. And the years passed, and we were never in, because he was 3 years, we were never in the same building together. And then the war came along, and he went out to war. And when he came back, it turns out that he was a really nice guy, and we became good friends. And of course, Collie was our cheerleader when Johnny and Bruiser were in high school, and I was a sophomore, so I was very fond of her as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
And she of you.
I don't know how many people know it, but P.G. Rosenblatt is the most dapper dancer in all of Prescott, Arizona. I have been in situations where he danced all the women in the room under the table, and they're all sitting there just dying, and he's going, "Okay, who's next? Who's next?"
If I may, I'd like to tell you also about going to Lincoln School. I was reared by a German Shepherd. His name was Bob, and he really took care of me. My sister Jenny Mae was 5 years older, and so she was growing up and having her own life. And so I'd be home at night, and Bob would take care of me. Bob followed me to school every day to Lincoln School. Those were long before leash laws, and so it was kind of usual to see dogs running loose in Prescott. Bob didn't run loose. He just stayed by my side and went to school with me and slept outside until recess. And when we'd take recess, he'd get the little red ball, and the entire student body would chase Bob around trying to get the ball, and he wouldn't let them catch it. And the only person he'd give the ball to was me. And Abby Lee Taylor, who was the principal, called me, and I don't know how many times, she said, PG, you must leave Bob at home. And I tried, but Bob wouldn't stay home, and even tried locking him in our garage, and he broke out of the garage and knew where I was, so he came to school with me every day.
PG had a little lamb. Okay, hang on. Go ahead, and we'll do Bruce.
No, I had nothing.
Soapbox cars. PG's family were tinsmiths. And when it came soapbox car time, they built a racer you wouldn't believe. It was just beautiful. Had custom wheels, and it was just a regular race car. Well, the rest of us made our soapbox cars, and they were kind of ridiculous. But anyway, come race time, of course, PG could just whiz out and beat us. And Bill Valley and I, our biggest thought of race time was if we could cut PG off at the Congregational Church, maybe we could get him. And we would try like crazy, but PG would zip out ahead of us, and he would win. Well, they took us to Williams, Amos Kent and some guys, and oh man, we were in hog heaven. And that hill at Williams was really long and very steep. And PG, with his car, he ended up clear down in the next town, I think.
Now, Bruce, were those cars you actually rode in? You drove the car?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, because our kids grew up, with a toy on a track.
No, these were ride in and no brakes. And we had some awful wrecks.
Oh, I can imagine.
Anyway, PG was, that car of his was such a whiz. It was just, our biggest thought was, if we can just cut him off, we'll get him, but we never got him.
That's awesome. Brindley, would you take the mic over to Charlie Phillips? Charlie was, he told you earlier, a student, a teacher, and a principal at Lincoln School. You must have a good Lincoln School story or 20 to tell us.
What about the maypole dances, Charlie?
Yeah, I got into the maypole dances when I was in kindergarten. I think everybody did. I had one student that Mr. Judd had to go up at the end of the year and see why there weren't any grades on the report card. And the teacher said, well, he didn't do anything. Well, that was your job to see that he did. So I got him the next year in my 5th grade, and he started out doing that to me, and he hit a brick wall. But his mother was at the fire escape door every Friday for the work that he didn't get done, and on Monday she was there with the work done. And we went through the whole year, every Friday, every Monday, to get the work done out of him. And later he was working at the library at Yavapai College.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
He's the only student I ever had like that.
Turned his life around.
Well, I had a memory of Charlie Phillips, which I won't share with you. He swears he didn't say it. But he had what they called the Sundowners Club. And if you made Charlie mad that day, you stayed after school. And sundown meant it was about sundown when you walked home because the buses were gone. I did that a lot in 5th grade. I was such a goody two-shoes. I don't know what Charlie thought I was doing wrong. Okay, can we come around here to Charlie Fanara? I got another question. Okay, Charlie, here's what I want to know. Your family was an anomaly with all of the cousins growing up in a big house together. Tell us a little bit about life in the big house. Can we move that mic over toward him a little closer? There you go. Thanks, PG.
I can tell you one thing, that to be heard you had to yell. with 7 boys and 1 girl, and we get around the dinner table, and if you didn't yell, you didn't get anything to eat. But it seemed like they all got along good and everything. Well, 3 of them were sisters, and they married 2 brothers and a cousin. And they didn't seem to have, we'd have your arguments now and then, but as a whole, we got along fine.
And a lot of you would have been then in school together and then in high school together.
Yeah, Joe and I were in school together, and we both got out and joined the Navy. And the rest were younger than I, and I was overseas while they were still going to school here.
And Charlie, you had at least one grandmother living with you in that house at one time.
Absolutely. She was the boss.
The grandmother made the rules, huh?
Yeah, she did. Well, with her 3 daughters,
Oh.
they obeyed her. But it was a great time, and how it happened, I don't know if anybody can live that way today, but we had no problems.
Isn't that wonderful? There's a picture frame in my home that came out of the big house when you guys were done living there, and I treasure it. A lot of the pieces are chipped off of the decoration, but I just love it.
Yeah, I can't complain.
That's awesome. It's just so different, isn't it?
Judy,
Yes, Elizabeth.
visitors could go any afternoon into the back door and sit at the kitchen table with Elvisha and Flora and her sisters, and the grandmother would be there, and we'd all have coffee. You could go any afternoon, and they welcomed you.
Oh, my goodness. And Charlie and Joanne, you still live in the neighborhood
Oh, exactly.
behind the market, don't you? To me,
Yes,
that's just a perfect little
Yeah,
neighborhood.
you bet. It's Brookside Boulevard.
Brookside Boulevard, it's just wonderful little neighborhood. Helen, would you assist?
Charlie has to go and give blood for his 31st time.
Yay. Charlie, we thank you for coming. It was wonderful to have you here.
I have a 315 blood donation. I've been given 31 years.
Wow. Well, it was great to see you, Charlie. We love you. Take care.
My former students, everyone, Terry and Jill, and I haven't seen her in years. And of course, Judy. Who else? Terry. Yeah.
Terry, yep, lots of us in Charlie's classrooms. Well, thank you, dear.
This is Joe's granddaughter. The one
Okay, so, we talked about the wartime, and someday we're going to be able to put that movie in with your stories. You know, there's Johnny Marcello today telling the stories of World War II, and cut back to Johnny Marcello at what, 18, maybe 19 years old in the Metzger movies? Have you seen it?
I'm sorry.
Have you seen the Metzger movie?
Yes, yeah.
And so you were about 18 maybe in that? I know Bruce was no more than 18, 19.
I remember the picture, but I don't remember when it was.
Yeah.
I think that was before I went in, but I'm not sure.
I don't know either. He put on there.
'Cause I went in and come out, and I still wasn't old enough to go to my dad's bar.
Boy, that was true of lots of people,
Yeah,
wasn't
A lot
it?
of the guys. I mean, Charlie probably was
Well,
the same
that's the
way.
way all of us, we went to World War II and we was old enough to be in the Army, but we could, down there in Abilene, it was dry. You couldn't go into a bar down there.
Wow.
You know, soldiers, you had your uniform on, well, they had a guy there at the door and said, "Get the hell out of here, you're not
Wow.
allowed in here."
Oh, for heaven's
And we
sake.
always said, well, we're old enough to fight, but we're not old enough to have a drink.
Or vote, yeah, that's ridiculous, isn't it? Oh, that's so funny. Yes, Jane.
I thought of one more thing. I remember when we were all well, even when my kids were in high school, and why we had the big storm. And they used to close off the roads, any big hill like Pleasant Street and
Elks Hill.
Elks Hill, they would close all those roads off, and they would have barricades across them, so when the cars came, because you couldn't stop the sleds, you just came down. But all the kids had a wonderful time, and Prescott was really fun during the big storm, because all the kids got together, and they would walk from one side of town to the other side of town, and go on the hills on the west side, and then they go on the hills on the east side. And it was just a great time. No television. They just had fun playing with each other.
That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. PG.
I just thought of something when Jane was talking about Sheriff Robbins' campaign for re-election. And I can't remember what year it was, but I probably at that time maybe was in 5th grade or something like that, 5th or 6th grade. And as one of his campaign devices, he rented an airplane and dropped little parachutes, little parachutes with Sheriff Robbins, re-elect Sheriff Robbins.
That's great.
And I guess the Murphy brothers, they had about the only airplane in Prescott in those days, and
Floyd and Lloyd.
Lloyd and Floyd.
Oh, that's funny.
And they would fly around and drop these parachutes off, and God, I ran all over West Prescott gathering those little parachutes. God, it was fun.
Okay, so let me just ask you about transportation, because trains were a big thing in your day, right? Like when you went to war, did you take the train? There was no Black Canyon Highway, correct? So you drove through Wickenburg. That could not have been fun. And no air conditioning. And then I read Dixon Fagerberg's book, Waiting for the 4 o'clock train. Sounded wonderful. Lots of Prescott history in that book. But do you all have any, train memories? And
I can tell you when I used
Fran?
to go to California, we'd always leave around 8, 9 o'clock at night, because we'd hit Blythe down there about midnight, and that was the coolest part of the whole trip.
oh, gee.
But we'd wait until it was dark before we'd leave to go, and so crossing the desert didn't mean anything to us. And everybody had a bag, one of those cloth bags
Right.
that put water on, and you always had it on your bumper, so in case you run out of water or got hot, you had water with you.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was terrible.
Yeah.
The water what? Oh, in Blythe?
The Blythe was terrible. It had all kinds of junk in it. I was going to use another word, but I had to clean it up.
Yeah, good.
But it was junk.
Yeah. Well, Mary Fran Ogg, who was my mentor in high school, took us on the last train out of Prescott, 1961, and took our Girl Scouts. We did the train down to Skull Valley, and then cars picked us up and brought us back again. And it makes me sad to think how long we've been without that train service. And the tracks, what's the trail that goes through Granite Dalles? Thank you. The Peavine Trail that's on the old train track is so, so beautiful.
Well,
Come up through Iron Springs.
when we went up to Kingwood to play, it was an hour earlier. They had California time, we had Arizona time, so we all, when we got ready to go play, well, hell, they were all dressed up and ready to play, and we wasn't even in our uniform yet.
Oh, that's funny. In Kingman.
Yeah, but Kingman then had a California time. They had an hour difference. I forget how
so
it was.
funny.
But
That's
we
awesome.
all had Arizona time. When you got to Kingman, well, you had to have California time.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Bren, let's take the mic around to Martha Jean Setkovich. We haven't heard nearly enough from you either.
Yeah.
Tell us a story.
Oh, well,
when you mentioned something about,
Okay, excuse me, get your mic in your face there. The little one, both of them. We need you to do both of them.
I lived at a number of different locations in Prescott, but my favorite spot was on South Pleasant. And I can remember when we had a lot of the snow, we would all go up to the top, and some of us had small sleds, and some guys had great big sleds. And that was really a fun thing to jump on there and go down, clear down to Gurley Street, because it was going quite fast. But I remember a number of the families, the Matthews and the Lunas and the Stewarts, and there's one other I can't remember. But we all played together so much, especially in summer evenings. We would have hide and seek kind of things, and have a lot of fun together. That was my favorite spot. I really believe, as far as Prescott goes.
Let me ask you, I don't know how many golfers we have in this crowd, but I picked up a silver dish the other day, and it said Indian Hill Golf Club, 1940. And I thought Hassayampa Country Club was always Hassayampa Country Club, like even to the 20s. Does anyone know?
I don't know about that.
I can't remember what the name was, but wasn't always Hassayampa Country Club.
Would it have been
It was the
Indian?
country- What the hell was it? The
Would it have
Corey,
been Indian Hill?
Corey Coffee Pot, you remember?
Right, Mr.
Everybody
Corey.
was about it, but what was it called? It wasn't called Hassayampa.
Was it Indian Hill? No?
I don't
Indian Hill Golf Club.
You remember?
That was in 1940, it said, and
Well,
I
that
just
was
thought,
late.
huh? That was
I'm talking
way,
about in the 31s, 32s, 33s.
I don't know.
Because they were,
They didn't come that early, did they, the Corys?
oh yeah, they had, they didn't
Yeah, they
have
started
grass
it, didn't
greens,
they?
had
They started it, but I
Cotton,
didn't think
cottonseed that was pressed, and
Yes.
that was the greens. There was-
Yes.
Yeah, that was the green.
That was the greens.
Yeah, I remember the year that Jill can tell you the date, when they grassed Hassayampa Country Club, when they actually planted grass on the greens. I remember when that happened. Isn't it interesting? Well, I think we're going to wrap up. Some people are getting a little weary. Please take your bottles with you. Those are a gift from myself and my children who own the Hike Shack. And drink it and think of me and think of each other. And this has been a dream of mine for so many years you don't even know. So I'm thrilled to death that you're all here and that we could come hear your stories, and we'll be able to tell you how you can share them with some of your families as well. So love to all of you. Thanks again to the guys doing the video, and we will see you again soon.